Hello, everybody. This meeting is about subglottal pressure and about if the subglottal pressure is an enemy or a friend of your voice. As you may recall from a previous presentation, we were talking about glottal adduction and how is it important as a physiological factor affecting the production of your sound. Today we are going to talk about an equally important parameter to the voice source, which is the subglottal pressure. How does it feel and what it is? So I have Brian Gill and Johan Sundberg, as always, the three of us together to speak about these things. So Johan, do you want us to explain us what is subglottal pressure?
No.
So Johan, can you explain us what is subglottal pressure?
Well, subglottal pressure is the pressure below the glottis, because sub means below and glottal, that is connected to the glottis where the vocal folds are. So what is the air pressure below the glottis? That is subglottal pressure. And when you breathe, you lower it below zero. When you inhale, and when you exhale, you increase it so that the air goes out of your lungs. Okay, so it regulates the airflow through your mouth, for your respiratory system. Now, it has, as Filipa mentioned, a huge effect on the voice source, on the function of the vocal folds and the sound that the pulsating airflow through the glottis is producing.
How do you measure it? What it is? Is Pascal? Is it centimeters of water column? How do you measure subglottal pressure?
This is the tool.
Aha.
This is the tool, and it is the little piece of water that it contains water in the left and right, and you could see it. Going up and down, and you could then compare the level of the water in the left and the right column. And the level difference between the left and right column, that is the pressure measure, centimeters of water column. What is the distance between the left and the right water column? That is the measure. And it doesn't really matter if you have a wider or a thinner tubing. So it becomes the same, it shows the same measure for the same pressure. So it's nice and simple and straightforward.
But I think you also have another way of showing it, don't you?
Yeah. But there is also the gadget, the little equipment that Glottal Enterprises is making now. It is called the PG 100E, and it looks like this. And if you start it, then it will show you the pressure. So I could vary the pressure here. And it shows the centimeter of water column, the pressure in centimeter of water column. If you close your mouth and then produce a subglottal pressure, then you will have the lung pressure in the mouth. So the P occlusion pressure in the mouth equals the subglottal pressure, rather exactly. So, and this takes an average. So if I say pa 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 pa, the needle will stay at the average subglottal pressure during this. So I will try. Pa 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 pa. Okay, like that. So you could visualize, but there is also a nicer way to visualize, and that is to go to software that was constructed by people at the Stockholm Linguistic Department, Johan Sundberg, and Peter Branderud, and I should then do the share screen, which means pink box in Swedish.
Just for the viewers, that's what it means?
Yes, pink box. Yes, share screen. Okay, so
I was going to say, though, for the viewers' benefit, the term intraoral pressure does come up in voice meetings sometimes. And that's essentially what you're measuring with the P occlusion. You're measuring intraoral pressure.
Yes, exactly.
As you said, it's the equivalent of subglottal pressure. And those things have been measured to equate and make sure that they're the same by measuring what you just did and having a tracheal puncture at the same time, where you can actually measure the pressures, and it's been shown to line up. So don't puncture your trachea.
No, don't do that.
Just go with the intraoral pressure.
Not needed.
Although I would add that you need to do the P occlusion, the repetitions of the pairs syllables in a very legato way, so you get a nice flat peaks, as Johan is about to show.
Yes. So here we have, do you have my screen?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so here we could see what happens with the subglottal pressure. That is a red line. Okay, so it varies. It shows that the subglottal pressure is continuously varied when you vary vocal loudness, actually. The subglottal pressure is the main tool for varying vocal loudness. Yeah.
Yes, I was about to, before going into vocal loudness and see how the subglottal pressure changes with the loudness, I would like to ask you both, maybe to Brian, do you have any way that you could ask the students to pay attention to the subglottal pressure?
Yeah, I think that becoming aware of the subglottal pressure as the driving force is key to controlling your voice. And so one of the things that I'll often do if I sense a person's not so aware of that is I'll teach them how to do a vocal fry that has complete adduction, but then you control with a very regular pulse. So single pulses at a time. So it has to be a very low pressure in order to do that. And so the person, in a sense, is taming their subglottal pressure. Mm-hmm. And people who tend to push on their voice, they'll tend to do, when they are asked to bring the vocal folds all the way together, they will go, and they'll strain their voice. And so you have to get them to relax more. And I don't know if you can hear that.
Yeah, we hear it.
Okay, good. So you want to listen for those individual pulses. And I can put on a supplemental video if that would be helpful. But as long as you could hear that, you want to hear those individual pulses, and you can actually get them down to one at a time with a second in between them if you really control your subglottal pressure. So that. And
I could do the same thing, but I must be warmed up before that. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Yes.
Well, I actually was going to ask you, some teachers, including me, use ingressive vocal fry for those very low pressure pulses. Would that, like, if you cannot do it very relaxed way, the normal way, then if you do the ingressive vocal fry,
then you're taming supraglottal pressure.
Yeah.
So I like ingressive because we spend most of our time with pressure coming from beneath the vocal folds. And so to have pressure on the top of the vocal folds for a change, you end up getting stability, I think, in positioning of the larynx and positioning of the vocal folds. I think that's a great idea, but it wouldn't tame your subglottal pressure.
No. But to the question of how to feel relaxed, because there are some students that when try to do vocal fry, they will press so hard that they will not get the regular vocal fry. So I use the above. I really love it.
I love it too. That's good. You're the master of ingressive fry. Nicely done.
Yeah, and also I would like to share something on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
I noticed
bottle.
the bottle you had there. Yeah,
Yes.
you're
So
thirsty.
yeah, well, I am indeed, but I was going to use this to demonstrate something else. That, for example, I asked the students to feel their subglottal pressure by monitoring visually the bubbles in the water with the subglottal pressure. Because if you do a strong sound, the bubbles will be with high frequency. But if you reduce the subglottal pressure, then you have slower bubbles. So you can do, let's see if you could see the bottom of my bottle, and then you could do.
Can you move your hand away from where the bubbles are, just so we can see? Yeah.
Yeah. And if you do it with high pressure, do it with high pressure.
Sorry?
Do it with high pressure now.
And then back to low pressure.
Yeah.
Less chaotic with low pressure and much more chaotic with high pressure.
Yeah, and much quicker, much more bubbles with high pressure because there's more airflow that wants to get out of the tube.
But Johan, you also have a nice way of feeling your subglottal pressure in your body. How do you do that?
Yeah, with shifting between loud and soft S. So it is simple as this. But I could also do it together with the equipment and put the tubing behind the tongue. And I have just practiced this today, and I was able to do it just a minute ago. So let me try. Yeah, so I put the tube in the mouth behind the tongue and say,
Mm-hmm.
So you see that the pressure is varying when I go. Yes,
Yep,
and
super clear. Very clear.
Yes, it's very good. So you were saying a minute ago or so that the subglottal pressure relates with the intensity of your voice, right? So what does it do to your voice?
Well, the main thing is people often believe that the main thing is that the sound pressure, the loudness of the sound increases, but the main effect, I think, is more the spectrum tilt. And I could demonstrate that because I have a spectral display here, and it is thinking of awaking. And here we go. Yeah. And let us make it a bit big. So what do we have here? Here we have a loudness along the vertical axis, and here we have frequency along the horizontal axis. And then I would like to have a rather narrow bandwidth. So I reduce it to 30 hertz, so we see the individual sound, partials. Here we go. And look at the slope of the spectrum. I have a neutral degree of vocal loudness here, and then I do it loudly and softly, and shifting between loud and soft. So you see that the high frequencies gain much more decibels, much more loudness when I go than the lower partials.
Could you do it strong once and freeze the recording button so that we see the spectral tilt, and then do the same with the soft phonation?
Sure. And here you see the low frequencies and the high frequencies, the first, second, third, fourth format. And when I do it with soft voice, I have very weak high overtones at 3 kilohertz here. But the difference here is rather small. And ironically enough, the the loudness measure that is mostly used is the sound pressure level, which is actually the loudness, the sound pressure of the strongest particle in the spectrum. Just one single, or perhaps two or three of the strongest particle. They decide how many decibels you put out. But I think the perceptually more relevant aspect is how strong the higher overtones is. And I'm back again to subglottal pressure. Subglottal pressure is your tool for varying vocal loudness, and that changes the spectral tilt.
Wonderful. But it also regulates speech, right? So
yeah,
how does it happen? I mean, people in conversational speech, if they want to talk louder, they increase their pitch. So are the two things connected?
Yeah. And
in speech,
yeah,
but singers can do high pitch, soft and loud, right?
Yeah, yeah. That is very important, that you don't need to sing loudly as soon as the pitch goes high. It's not very poetic. Now let's see. We should demonstrate that. Then the one way of doing it is to blow through your where is my fingers? So I will blow here through the second and third finger and vary subglottal pressure. Yeah, so you hear the pitch goes up when I increase the loudness, and by raising the subglottal pressure.
Could you accompany me on my next recital?
Yeah,
I think
it will be a contemporary music show. Yeah.
And then Filipa use these two fingers.
Yeah.
That's a great demo. That's a great demo because you're not stretching your fingers like that.
Yeah, you can't use. So when your vocal folds, you could stretch and then their frequency goes up, but you can't do that with the fingers.
So I have a question comment. Those are always dangerous. So spectral tilt, right? And essentially the measure of spectral tilt is the drop off in decibel level as you increase in frequency of harmonics, right? The rate of drop off. So whether it's 6 decibels per octave or 12 or 18, those are often comparisons. But when someone has learned to separate out raising pitch from the subglottal pressure and be able to sing different dynamic levels, what's really controlling the spectral tilt then? Isn't it the change in connectivity at the vocal fold level, contact time? The greater
it is not.
time.
The physiologic thing that decides the loudness, that is how quickly the air pulses is terminated by the glottal closure. So now let's see, this is the far end and this is beginning of the air pulse. And if you have a soft voice, it goes like this. And if you increase the vocal loudness by increasing subglottal pressure, the termination of the air pulse will be quicker. And that is the acoustic, that is the physiological tool for varying the loudness and to reduce the spectral tilt.
So you
it's a
reaction. Sorry, go ahead.
So it's a reaction, though, of the vocal fold contour change along with the increase of subglottal pressure. Because if you increased subglottal pressure and intentionally did not allow the vocal folds to increase resistance, then I have a tremendous vocal subglottal pressure, but nothing's really going to happen with regard to
because the air pulse is not closing the glottis quickly. The air pulse is then having a rather gentle slope towards the zero or to the minimum that you have in leaky or breathy voice.
But I have a comment, Johan, because I see what you are meaning about the skewedness of the pulse and the MFDR. But Brian mentioned the contacting time. Although the closed phase of a glottal flow glottogram is not the same thing as vocal contact on the EGG, they both relate, right? So
yeah. Yes, so actually most of the parameters that describes the voice source, the pulsating transglottal airflow, they are related to the closing speed of the glottis. So if the pulses are terminated rather quickly, then the closed phase will be longer because now it goes to zero quickly. And if you have a softer voice, the closed phase will be shorter because the closing of the glottis is happening rather slowly. So
vocal fold approximation is linked in there then.
Yes, and if you increase glottal adduction, approximation of the vocal folds, then you increase at any subglottal pressure, you will increase the closed phase, the duration of the closed phase, if you increase glottal adduction, the glottal resistance. That will be. But if you don't change that, no.
But the subglottal pressure, going back to subglottal pressure, is a parameter that can be independent from glottal resistance, right? Because you can raise subglottal pressure without increasing vocal resistance or adduction. And as I showed the last time in the video of the flow ball, and using a flow ball and a messa di voce, you can see that I can blow the flow ball and increase and decrease subglottal pressure without changing my resistance. But if as soon as I change that, the ball that is not kept anymore in the same position in the air, right?
Yeah.
Bravo.
Then you see this. You can clearly see the change in the airflow.
Yeah.
But you're not really changing the intensity much. That's great. But that's hard to do without some kind of resistance here, right? Yeah. One of the things I think we should highlight though is subglottal pressure by itself. If we say that that's what controls spectral tilt, right? Then we're leaving out the approximation of the vocal folds as a big portion of that, because you can really increase subglottal pressure a lot without affecting spectral tilt necessarily. I think instinct for spontaneous making of sound, it's going to do it. But I think if you tease it out and separate out subglottal pressure from the resistive nature of the vocal folds, then you actually can have a pretty high subglottal pressure with low resistance of the vocal folds, and spectral tilt is going to stay like that.
Yes.
Which is what I'm talking about right now. That's a really heavy driving force, but there's not going to be a change. Whereas if I add that driving force and resist with the vocal folds, then spectral tilt goes like that.
Yeah, when you are in breathy voice, mainly the fundamental is varying with subglottal pressure. So the effect on spectral tilt that is occurs only, I think, when you have vocal fold closure in the vibratory cycle of the vocal folds.
Okay. So I think if you announce that as one of the prerequisites to subglottal pressure being the thing that varies it kind of naturally. I think isn't that your point? Is that it's a sort of natural occurrence once the vocal folds are sufficiently adducted, that subglottal pressure alone is what will change the...
Yeah. But if you have breathy voice, it is the fundamental. You have a sinusoidal voice source then. So then it is the fundamental amplitude of the voice source fundamental that is varying.
Okay.
Well, before continuing and asking you about whether subglottal pressure is an enemy or not of our voice, I just want to ask something. Does your body posture affect subglottal pressure?
I don't think so. I think the amount of air that you could inhale and the length of the phrases that you produce is depending on your body posture. So if you have a straight back, then I think you could inhale more than if you are sitting like this, because the expansion of the rib cage is a bit, and the expansion of the abdominal wall is also a bit constricted, limited when you have a body posture like that.
Yeah, because my question relates to the fact that some choir singers say, oh, I cannot sing so well when I'm sitting, or I cannot have so much power when I'm sitting. So let's sing standing up. So that's why I've asked this question. Sorry, Brian, you wanted to say something.
Well, I think that also depends. Doesn't that also depend on vocal fold approximation? I've always been a big fan of your demo, Johan. When you inhale, close the glottis, and then slump.
Yeah.
That so if you also were vocalizing, you know, hey, how are you guys doing? Hey, and you squatted like that, all of a sudden you will increase subglottal pressure.
Yes, that's it. Yes.
So it always depends on the other parameter of
Yeah, because when you slump like that, then you press the abdominal content into the rib cage, and that is an acceleratory force.
Yeah. Chain reaction to
Yeah.
I think this conversation is very interesting, and we could continue this theme about body posture in another talk. So, Brian, tell me something. Is your subglottal pressure an enemy to your voice?
No, it's a necessity for your voice. It's actually the driving force and the pressure that moves the air to get the vocal folds vibrating. So in order to make a sound, you have to have a good subglottal pressure. But it does have to play well with the adduction of the vocal folds. And so I always like to think of the three parameters: the driving force, subglottal pressure, the resistance of the vocal folds, and then the resultant flow. And those three things are intimately intertwined, inseparable, and as you alter the different variables, you will change the other variables. So, yeah.
But the point is, if you want to use the voice as a musical instrument, they must be independent of each other, so that you could do what you want. You could increase glottal adduction, or you could decrease it, and you independent of subglottal pressure, and then you could also vary the subglottal pressure without increasing or decreasing the glottal adduction, glottal resistance.
And the outcome of that, which is the most important thing here, because people are drawn to singing and speaking well in public, if you tease out those variables and gain really heightened control of them, you increase the different colors with which you can communicate. So that would be the goal. It sounds very nerdy at first as you're teasing out these things, but an understanding of these variables and learning how to take command of them actually enables you to tell all the stories you want to tell in the most vibrant way possible. So,
because glottal adduction, glottal resistance is a very expressive tool that you must have under your control. That has a very strong effect, and if you play talk like this, it has a very different expressive color. But I was also thinking about these three parameters that control the voice source: the subglottal pressure, glottal adduction, and the pitch regulating system. And when you increase the pitch, you stretch the vocal folds. That is the mechanism to use. And if you stretch the vocal folds, they get a bit less willing to vibrate. So then they need to be served with a bit higher pressure. And that means then that in order to produce high notes, you need to use a bit higher pressure, and not exaggerate the increase of the subglottal pressure. But we could look at that also in the pink box. If I do the share screen, okay?
Yes. I was just wondering, that's why it's so important to practice staccato exercises, so that you come to the right pitch with the right subglottal pressure.
Yeah, yeah, that is,
Yep.
yes. So I will do some repeats of the pa, and at different pitches. Pa, 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 pa.
Could you do a try it?
And a bit
And freeze it.
Okay, let me do that with my third hand. Stop it. And and here we go. Yes, yes. So skilled professional singers, they paint wonderful pictures of this during the triad. And I used to be a much better singer. So, but now
you sound great.
Right.
But so you see,
Can you get the next one?
Yeah, the next one.
What?
Scroll to the right, so you go to the next one. There you go.
That is even nicer. Yes, yeah.
So what are we seeing here?
Subglottal pressure for the first, second, third, and so on tone in the triad. So
the highest note is not the highest, Johan.
No, and that is so wonderful, because you have, if you are going to perform a musically convincing version of this triad, the main essence of the melodic pattern is the entrance of the dominant seventh here. And this is the first tone of the second chord. So the pa 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 pa, and then comes the dominant seven, pa 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 pam. So you have to master your subglottal pressure with regard to the pitch and with regard to the musical phrase. That is
phrasing. Yeah.
Yes, and so subglottal pressure is also something that naive students tend not to do it like this. So they tend to push the top note, and then the dominant seven, they decrease the intensity. So they think that most important note in the phrase is the highest note, but actually for the purpose of musicality is not. So therefore subglottal pressure could also be a kind of guidance for phrasing, for shaping the phrases, the musical phrases, right?
Yes. Yes, and I think the skill to separate these three aspects, pitch and loudness and glottal reduction, that is intuitively a thing that composers know very well. I'm thinking about Verdi's Requiem, where the soprano in the last Libera Mi, I think she has a high B, almost 1000 hertz fundamental frequency, and she has to sustain it for a long time and go to pianissimo at the end. And that is going to be a very taxing task that you could manage only if you have perfect control over glottal reduction, subglottal pressure, and pitch.
Yes. Would you unshare, Johan?
This example?
And share your screen.
This example, though, that you just did, I think from another thing, just to emphasize, you're already saying it, but to take advantage of people's instinct to do phrase marking, like you said, like mark the phrase like that, can really help people not have too much driving. So teachers should really take note of that. If you can unaccent the top note, then you're going to get a person to learn how to sing high notes without excess driving force.
Yes. That's nice. Yes.
What else do you do, Brian, to access the subglottal pressure, the right subglottal pressure for the right tone?
So so in addition to the vocal fry, I'll also use the semi-occluded vocal tract postures like lip trills and raspberries. And you can really learn how to control driving force with no sound. So you can make more spit. or it's the equivalent to the bubbles that we saw earlier, which is a great demo. And I really like that one in particular because you're getting that massage effect back to the vocal folds. And but this one also is a visual, and you can see that the tongue vibrates more when you increase the subglottal pressure. So you can find ways to increase without increasing the resistance at the vocal fold level. So try and keep a similar volume or intensity and increase the change the frequency of vibration of the tongue by increasing the subglottal pressure. So that's a way to tease them out and separate them out, just like the bubbles. And then also intentionally having, since we know you need more driving force for a high note, make people more aware of the lower note being, and then the higher note, that this is actually going to increase vibration as you increase the frequency. So
Great.
Nice.
So I think this has been a great demonstration on how subglottal pressure is so vital to your voice and the control of your voice and your sound, and also that it's not an enemy of your voice if you master your instrument. So,
But it is important to observe that subglottal pressure is not a glottal pressure, it is subglottal pressure, it's air pressure below the glottis, and it is not how firmly you press the vocal folds together. And I think that if you confuse these two phenomena, these two functions, then subglottal pressure is your enemy. But if
yes,
you realize that they are different, that you could vary subglottal pressure and you could vary glottal adduction, glottal resistance independently, then you are approaching a good vocal technique.
I cannot resist to end up this conversation by not saying and referring to a video I once saw on the internet of someone telling that he couldn't care less about subglottal pressure.
Yes.
So I would say, well, if you care less about subglottal pressure, you are prone to sing out of tune all the time as well. So, and other things. So I wouldn't pay too much attention to not caring about subglottal pressure, because as a singer, you need really to master it.
Yeah, and learning how to identify the different parameters that figure into vocal production, and then learning how to take command of them is what makes you a fantastic singing actor.
Yeah.
So,
that is the entrance ticket to artistry.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you all for assisting. And until next time, we join you on these informal talks about science and voice pedagogy. Hej då!
Hej då!
Hej då!